Hi John,
Hey, Nathan, how are you?
how you doing, mate? How's things?
I'm good, thanks. It's good to chat, good to catch up.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
And congratulations, first of all, on the album. I've had it on for the past couple of days. Great.
Thank you very much, and thanks for playing the single. Yeah, it's exciting to get it out finally. So,
Mm.
um, a little while coming, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think it's a strong album. What I liked about it when I put the first track on, Ghost, I love that little intermission in the middle of the song. When I thought, this is great, where it sort of goes away and then comes back, which you really like. And I thought, good, this album's not going to follow any particular set of rules too much. It's going to do its own thing. And it sounds that way. That there's a sort of a free style to it, there's a good spirit to it.
Yeah, that was kind of. I don't know if that was intentional. I just kind of tried to let it be what it was going to be as much as possible, and not try to be, you know, sort of force it into any area. That section was originally a guitar solo at one point, and then we veered off.
Yeah.
Actually, Ghost was probably the song I had most trouble with. It was probably the first song I wrote for the record, but the last to kind of finish. I just couldn't find my way to it, and then I got Alva, who I'm a fan of,
Yeah.
and then when I got her voice on it, it just seemed to glue together. And then she got this beautiful um, sort of ethereal voices over the section. So I sacked off the guitar solo and just made something else out of it. So Alva to thank for that, really.
No, Alva's great. There's a song of Alva's called, I think it's Last to Leave. She's got a really
Yeah,
haunting voice, you know?
yeah. She's great. It was actually the first song I heard of hers was Between Your Teeth,
Right.
and and I kind of envisaged having a female voice on there. And as soon as I heard Alva's, I was like, that's the one. So thankfully she said yes. And
Cool.
we only met in December for a Christmas drink. I hadn't met her until that point. So yeah, we had a nice night. But she's great.
What I really liked about it too, I said it was sort of a freestyle, sort of free form to it, but it's one thing. It's a rock record, which I love. It's got a great indie sound to it. It's got all the things I like in an album, but at the same time, it's so strong on melody, and I think that's the trick, isn't it? To come up with something that's slightly left of center, has its own personality and definitely its own individuality, but remembering that you need the lift and you need the chorus, which you've done really well.
But thank you. Yeah, I mean melody. I mean obviously with Patrol over the years is a big factor, and you know rock and indie is probably where my heart lies and where I grew up, and that's where I spent most of my teenage and 20s listening to. But there's if you go as far like the Beatles, the melody's huge. So I think there's a little bit of everything in there over the years that I like. I know Fires has been mentioned. It's a bit shoegazy, but and I am a massive My Bloody Valentine fan, so I'm sure those influences across the record are probably coming out. But I was trying not to hide them and just let them be. So
Yeah.
there's bits of everything in there, but melody and a hook are things that have always been important to me, and or at least things that I've always been drawn to.
Yeah.
So it's hard to stay away from it.
Nothing wrong with a bit of shoegazing though, Nathan,
There's
either.
not at all. I did it for many years until I got only a bigger stage. So.
Yeah. I think as well, influences will probably subconsciously come out. I mean, I'll hear things that maybe someone else won't hear, or they'll hear things I won't. But I was even getting little sort of essences of the Pixies and even a Nada Surf and stuff just coming through.
Absolutely bands that I love and I'm a fan of, and have been, and especially Pixies. I mean, that was, Trompe Le Monde particularly, was a record that, I think I wore the tape out with that at the time. And
Yeah.
uh, when we had tapes. But yeah, so all those things are in there, and the song like Waves and stuff. There's a little bit of electronic music I love, and that seemed to lean towards that naturally in that song. So
Mm.
yeah, I think influences. I think you're right. They come out, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
I think if I had to go for one song, what I like about records too is the way that your attitude will change from week to week, and that's always a sign of a good album. Where it'll kind of change. But at the moment, I think the standout track for me is "We." I think it's particularly strong.
Wow. Okay. That's great. We was We was a track that I at the last minute I kind of panicked about, and wasn't sure that was going to make the record. So that's really great to hear. It's you know, the rest of the songs are personal. We was the one track, and maybe that's why I was nervous of it. Was more trying to. I was on holiday and Kerry, and I kind of started writing it there, and yeah, I was just trying to, you know, find, you know, meaning and observation in other people's lives, and try and, you know, it's a grand statement to try and say, to try and figure out what we all have in common, what we all feel. And I don't want it to turn into this huge thing that's what I was searching for, but I was trying to get snippets of life and observation, things that I've seen, and so I'm trying to write something that wasn't about me or personal. So to try and sort of move away from that, and so that's great that it connects. It's I love the vibraphone on it. It's probably my favorite thing, but it's but yeah, thanks for saying so. That's really great.
I think even sonically, it's that little bridge is so melodic, and it's kind of hypnotic as well. I was listening to, I walk around the house sometimes listening to albums, and there's a bit will always draw me back into the room, and that was the bit. You have to come close up for that bit.
Well, I'm glad it does, and I thank you so much for being you've obviously, you know, connected with it, and I appreciate that. That's brilliant.
As a guitar player, when you're putting songs together, do you think far enough ahead in the sense that, right, I'm going to play the Les Paul on that one, and that's going to be the Telly? Do you go that far with it?
Sometimes I guess there, you know, when you're hearing a song, certainly with Patrol, maybe I'll think a bit more ahead. With this, with my record, it was a lot more. I don't want to say chaotic, but I was certainly in the midst trying to do certain things. I was trying to play as much as I can myself, but I found out very quickly that there's a few things that I'm not. A drummer is one of them. But right. You know, but yeah, I mean, I guess you do, and certainly I guess more with Patrol that I'm thinking in those terms. But you know, a new instrument, a new guitar, a new effect, any of those things can influence. Or usually, when you get something new, that you know, you get a new piece of equipment and you get a song out of it usually. So because you're exploring. But sometimes with this, I don't know that there was. I knew what I kind of wanted things to sound like, and I knew what I wanted in my head, but I wasn't. It wasn't as, let's say, I had a vision for it, but I didn't. I knew what I didn't want, so there was a lot more searching, I think, maybe sometimes that I have been in the past, and maybe part of that is because it's a solo record. Although I had many great people play on it, you know, I was in charge, so that in itself changes things, you know. Pressure, I mean.
You know, it's funny though, from an equipment point of view, you could probably sit in the studio and go, right, I know what that needs. That needs electro harmonics, or that needs more overdrive, or that needs an old valve amp turned up to the maximum. And I suppose there comes a point where you have to almost, particularly because it's a solo record, you have to kind of have a committee within yourself to say, okay, right, Nathan, let that alone. It's a nice noise, but the song doesn't need it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess, obviously, being a guitar player, and you know, my usual role is not that I'm not thinking of the song or not thinking what everyone else is doing, or not trying to connect or bounce off whatever anyone else is doing, and that's being part of a band. And you know, this is, I still think of this as a band record. It was just it's a solo record, but I made it as a band in my head. But yeah, I think I had to rein back on a few things and probably just not, you know, try and serve the song rather than just endlessly, you know, do you know what this song needs? Is more guitar, because of course they're going to think that.
Yeah. Of course, that's it. It's like the singer is never loud enough, is he? In his
exactly. So yeah, there had to be a little bit more. The committee in yourself is good, but I think, you know, from being in a band for 20 plus years, you know, there's a certain amount of, you know, neural pathways that are ingrained in being a band and thinking that way. So yeah, there was. I didn't find it particularly challenging in that sense, but it was definitely something I had to be mindful of. You know.
Sure, it's like that Oasis "Be Here Now" thing. I think there's one track on that record. It's got like, I think it's 24 guitar parts on one song. You know, I mean, where do you start and where do you stop?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's that's the trick, and you know, I guess if it's necessary, it's necessary. But
Yeah.
you know, who calls that? Hopefully, the producer at some point. In this
Yeah,
case, it was
exactly.
Rocky and myself. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. In terms of collaborations, I think it's interesting the way you said it is a band record as well, because even
yeah,
though we have so much equipment, even at home, you can do so much on your own, but you get so much more from other people, don't you? I mean, collaborations as a musician, it can be easy, I suppose, to be a control freak, but when you open the door, you'll get something you mightn't have got.
massively, and I think whether that be just how someone chooses to voice a chord or sing a line or a melody, melodies which you touched on at the start. I think we have an internal melody and everyone kind of comes at things differently. And for example, getting Simon on Fires, I was struggling. I had ideas for it, but I just didn't think they were very good, and I was struggling to find my way into it. Certainly lyrically and melodically, musically it was sorted, and I wrote the music with Dave, and then I tried with everything else. It came slightly easier, and sometimes you have to push hard into a song, and it just wasn't happening. Yeah, I threw it out there, and I'd sent Simon a few songs to see if he was interested in playing on anything, and he really connected with Fires. So yeah, with that collaboration, you get back something that you have no idea what's coming, and that's part of
Yeah.
the excitement.
Yeah.
Unless it's not what you want, and sometimes that might happen, and then you have to have the awkward conversation. But
Yeah, yeah. A few
but
embarrassing emails back and forward.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I guess that's more difficult when it's a pal or a friend. So, but yeah, even when it's in the room where Dave played a lot of guitar on this record, and it's you find avenues, or someone suggests something or plays something which inspires you. So there's this, it's I think I work better that way. It's certainly a more enjoyable way. Maybe some people like doing it themselves and having that control, but I certainly liked, and again that's maybe habit, but I liked the bouncing of ideas, or the inspiration somebody can feed in to your own.
Sure. With Fires, Nathan, what was it about it, apart from the fact that it is a great song? What was it about it that said to you, this is going to be the first taste of the Strange Order of Things? This is the first piece of music I want people to hear from it.
Honestly, I was excited that what Simon had done, and I think he elevated the track massively. As I said, I was struggling to find my way into it a little, and there's definitely takes that I did with Rocky that I hope are now either archived or or deleted. But Simon came at it from just a completely different place, and then the song's not just yours. So it's someone else has invested, in this case, something incredible in it. So that's partly at play, but also honestly just people around me with management and that were involved in the record, and and I'm putting it out on Gary's third bar label. We're like, this is a single. There was enough people saying it that I was like, okay, well, I mean, of course, I think it is too, but to have that support around it, and for that many people to say it, I was like, okay, people are feeling this, and with my family, and I was playing stuff too, that were connecting with it, so it felt natural.
Wanted to talk to you too about Rocky O'Reilly, the producer on the album.
Yeah.
His work's very impressive. What he seems to be able to do so well is to create something that's very powerful. Sure, collaboratively, I'm sure, but allow the song to breathe, which is a real trick within itself. It's never too bombastic. It's strong, and it's an arresting sound, but he lets it do its thing.
Yeah, he's worked with so many great people from home and from far and away. Yeah, he was a joy and pleasure to work with, and he was certainly very patient with me. Yeah, and the thing you're describing there was something we were, I think towards the ends, and a lot of songs we threw stuff at, and purposefully other stuff we were okay. Maybe this will work, maybe it won't, and sort of for certain songs compiled stuff and then went through it. But what you're describing is we didn't overload it. We got pretty ruthless towards the end, with stripping out and bringing things back. So yeah, and he was absolutely on that page, which I was grateful that he and I were, thinking the same way.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, but he definitely was pretty much. I remember it as all along talking about letting the song come to light, and that's the most important thing. As I agree, and we all agree, that it's the. I've used this phrase before, and so have others. It's not, but song is king, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's kind of
yeah.
the attitude we approached it with, or at least certainly by the end, got the massive scissors out. And like, okay, we don't need this, or this is unnecessary.
His work with the Florentinas really good as well. I think they're benefiting so
Right.
much from that sound.
Yeah, I mean, I know that he's diverse as well. I mean, Malawi Shark Attack as well was, and then working with bands like the Florentinas of late, and who are doing great.
Yeah.
And yeah, and he loves it. He genuinely loves it, and I think that's a huge part of it. He certainly cares about music from Northern Ireland deeply, and that's priceless.
Sure. And speaking of bands, I'm going to take you back to the mothership for a second now. I know you've been recording with the band with Snow Patrol. Is the project finished?
Yeah, we're finishing up, and yeah, album number 8, and yeah, things are going good. So the plan is hopefully later this year,
Yeah.
to get the record out. Uh, I have no other information or dates or anything just yet,
Sure.
but yeah, absolutely, that's the plan. So, which is also very exciting, and yeah, really, really, really excited about it. Really, really, really enjoyed the process, and excited about quite a few songs. So
Fantastic. And Gary and the rest of the guys won't be annoyed about us spilling the beans on here then.
no, I mean everyone's really excited about it. So and I don't think it's any secret that we've been planning to release. It took a while, the last record, so let's not leave it that long again.
That's
Yeah,
great.
it's really exciting, really exciting. So yeah, it's a busy year, and final straw is 20 this year. So so yeah, it's been busy, but busy but exciting, and we'll not speak of the previous couple of years, but it's good to be able to create, release, and get back to what we do.
Brilliant. And of course, a handy kind of thing would be to do maybe a few warm-up Nathan Connolly shows. I'd like to hear this album live.
Yeah, I absolutely want to play this live, and I will be. We're trying to confirm dates, and hopefully in the summer. So
Great.
it'd be a shame not to. I think it would be a shame not to play it. I'd certainly like to do. I don't know how big a tour it will be, but I definitely want to play it, and I'll definitely be playing at home. That's for sure.
Great stuff, especially if you're going to be busy with Snow Patrol further down the line. Need to get it done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I need to get it in before that happens.
Out of your
but
system.
yeah, exactly. But no, I absolutely 100% going to play it live.
Well, look, good luck with it, Nathan. Best of luck with the album.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for supporting it. It means a lot. Thank you.
Take care, man. See you soon.
Cheers, John.
There's lots in there, so it'll probably end. It's going to be like an epic. We might sell this to Netflix for like a 7-parter or something,